This is a Howard Draw Blairs phase ALTERNA. This is an F1 from wild caught adults from 2015.
Deadly Tarantula Girl coming to you from Fort Worth, Texas with one of my all-time heroes, Mr. Stu Tennyson. Wow.
Hi, it's nice to meet you.
It's an honor to meet you,
what
sir.
What an introduction.
Oh my gosh. I just, this man is amazing. He's been herping. I honestly don't know where to start. I'm almost speechless, but he's been in the herp world since the 70s and doing field work and working with some of the greats. And I would say that your niche is kind of ALTERNA, although, wow, so many of the things that you're doing.
ALTERNA is really what started it. I mean, I started liking reptiles when I was 4 years old.
Wow.
I'd sit in my grandfather had a small library, and I remember he had some Snakes of the World by Raymond Dittmar.
Ooh.
And I think I was a hyper child, because they'd stick me in there in front of that snake book and open it up, and I would calm down. I would sit there for hours looking at the pictures in that book. That's what started it. But then when I was about 12, I answered an ad. Of course, back in those days, this was the 60s, in
right.
66. I was 12 years old, living in Newport Beach, California,
mm-hmm.
and there was no internet, and there was no Craigslist, and there was no venue there was no herp
shows,
meetings or shows or anything. So I used to look at the Sunday paper and the ads, and occasionally you'd see wild animals of different types in there, and as dogs and cats and everything else. But I would look at that ad because that was it. And I saw an ad for some yellow rat snakes, $12.50.
Wow.
And I talked my dad into taking me over to this guy's house. We called him up. He said, yeah, I got these rat snakes for $12.50. So we went over there. And this guy, in fact, he was the guy that called this morning, Dave Jakes. We've been friends for like 50 years now.
Wow.
He moved out here too. He was, back then, he was in his like mid-20s, and I was 12, and I mean, he was like a god to me. I would go in his house, and I mean, he has his own house, like this. There's snakes everywhere. You know, takes me in a snake room, and he's pulling out cobras, and showing me gaboon vipers, and 10-foot boas, and herper.
Oh,
I mean, this
yeah,
was like,
that's
oh
paradise.
man, yeah, I want to be just like this guy. You know, he's drinking Bloody Marys in the morning, and good-looking girlfriend, and all this stuff. So, anyways, I bought that snake, and we became friends. And I guess, you know, back in those days, we all wanted to share information. We didn't hide nothing because we wanted the hobby to grow. So he kind of took me under his wing, and he took me road driving, snake hunting,
nice.
for the first time in my life. We went out to Onzabrego Desert, and we found snakes. I mean, nothing spectacular that you would think of this day,
right.
but just to be able to find like 50 snakes in a night.
Oh.
Sidewinders every quarter mile, glossy snakes, long-nosed snakes, little sand snakes, Kyanactis, but I understand they changed the genus name to Sonora now, but I don't know why, because they're different than the Sonora that you find in the other parts of the country. But anyways, that's kind of what kicked it off. And I remember going in his snake room, and he showed me everything, but he had gray bands. This is in 1966.
Wow.
When they weren't even really, I don't even know if they were described until 74, or maybe they were described by Flurry in a paper. Mm-hmm. But back then, I mean, they were like extremely rare. There's
right.
only like
people didn't really know.
Oh, nobody knew.
In the snake world.
There was nothing documented. There was no books about them. handful of people even knew they existed, but I saw them and I fell in love with that snake. I said, those are the snakes I want to have. But it wasn't until probably my early 20s that I actually went hunting and found some. Because Dave had them, but he never bred them. I don't know if he had all males or didn't know how to breed snakes, but he didn't produce any babies. So I finally got some when I went hunting for him. By then, that was in 77 when I found my first one. These are my first 3. That's the one I caught right behind Hollister.
That is funny.
In May. And then these are 2 I caught on a subsequent trip out there. A year, I think the next year, the year after.
Wow.
And I was, of course, thrilled to death. And by then, I met other people that had hunted them and had a general idea how to find them and where. They didn't have any idea how big the range really was. Back then in the 70s, nobody was hunting around Sanderson or some of the other localities. So anyways, that's how it started.
Wow.
And yeah, I got into gray bands. For a while the goal was to get like animals from every locality. Trouble with that is I had to get them from other people because they were so hard to find. I couldn't, I hunted Christmas Mountains, never found one. But then I kind of did a reverse on my philosophy of keeping gray bands. I wanted to only keep stuff I collected myself.
Oh, okay.
So then I started getting rid of a lot of the other localities that I didn't collect and just started focusing on, localities that I had collected myself. And then in later years I switched again and started getting into some of those different morphs because that was kind of fun too.
Yeah. Yeah, they're very visually interesting gray bands are so diverse on its own.
Yeah. Okay, this is a Het Leucistic, and they call this a visual het because the hets frequently have this washed out kind of hypo look to them.
Wow.
And for a while, in fact, when I first got into them, I was told that you can always tell a Het Leucistic because
they have these
like
specific markers.
So then I outbred them to a Howard Draw, and I'll show you some of those babies.
Tell us about some of the morphs or specific locales that you're focused on right now.
Well, just to kind of hitchhike off of what you're saying, I think that's one of the things that kept my interest with gray bands, and I think it is the same with other people too, is there's so much variation in the localities and the different places that it's kind of like having different snakes, even though it's the same species.
It is. It's like a treasure hunt. Anytime you're in an area, find a gray band, it can look a number of different ways.
It's not like bull snakes in Texas where you can find a bull snake and 200 miles away,
Right.
find another one and they look the same. I'm focused now on my Howard Draw snakes, which you saw, because they, the particular ones that I collected produce really nice Blair faces. They have the nice wide orange saddles.
Right.
And are like a real typical Blair eye morph. Then I have my 2886s, which we didn't even look, but they look real similar to Hueco Mountains. They're
wow!
They're like almost a bluish gray with really narrow bands, and I like those because that's a very rare locality. There's only been a handful ever collected there. In fact, I think I caught the third one that was ever collected off of that cut, and I caught 2. And I don't think, let's see, that was the 4th one ever found. And then I think there's a rumor of a guy that found a couple of them off of there. So there's only been about 6 that I know of, and nobody's producing them but me.
Also pretty deep into hognose and milk snakes.
Yeah, again, they're colubrids that I like, and I started keeping milk snakes.
And he has a few birds, but they're really quiet.
You want me to shut the door? I have an interest in the milk snakes because, again, that started at an early age. I think they're just pretty, and the pretty stuff caught my attention. So I started getting into those and keeping them, and I've had just milk snakes just about every subspecies. But I've kind of like focused, as we talked about earlier, on the ones that are a little bit easier to keep because the high labor-intensive types just take up too much time.
Right. So you've refined your collection a little bit.
Yeah. I had a breeding group of St. Mary's Coastal Plains milk snakes, which are really neat looking, and they're fairly uncommon in collections, but the babies are just tiny, and they're kind of like the tricolored hognose or something where you got.
It's kind of a gamble when they're babies whether you can.
Oh yeah, I lose some of them because it was just hard to get them to eat. And even tube feeding them, I mean, they're so tiny. Their little heads are just, about the size of a Tic Tac.
Yeah, that's scary.
So it's hard to work with. But I worked with those for about 10 years. Gotten out of those. Worked with New Mexico milk for a long time. Got out of those. But I've kept the Sinaloans, Hondurans, and Mexican milks, and red milks.
Additionally, you have a couple of venomous lizards, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I never was interested in anything venomous because it's venomous. It just didn't interest me. They're fascinated with that, I guess, because of the challenge,
adrenaline
the
rush.
yeah, the being close to danger, whatever. I don't know, but so I never kept anything hot. Well, I did years ago, just a few things, but the interest faded. But the lizards kind of fell into my lap. A couple of years ago, just some different people that I knew had them suddenly available, and I thought, well, what the heck, it's something different, and I got them pretty cheap. And when I got them, I really liked them. They're really cool animals.
They are amazing.
So I just started collecting more. I mean, I didn't go out trying to find them, but they just kind of like here and there, they came to me. I mean. Friends that I had some available that I didn't even know had them. A friend of mine picked some up at the Hot Show in San Antonio for me at a really good price. So little by little, I started keeping more of those, and now I'm kind of fascinated. I hope I can breed them because the babies are really cute.
I hope you can breed them too, because we're friends.
Yeah, I know. And I will hook you up. Special family deal, family price.
Awesome. Sounds good. And I hope you come down our way and come visit our place soon.
Well, like I say, I've hunted ALTERNA and other snakes right out, probably just down the road from you.
Awesome.
In fact, well, quick off-the-wall story, has nothing to do with snakes. I was in the Army. This is quite a while ago. And I had offices all the way out there in Lubbock and Amarillo that I used to have to go visit, and in Midland and Odessa. So I went out there, and of course I would sneak out snake hunting in my government car. and one time I went down to I guess it might have been Crane. And I just bought a new Glock, 9mm Glock, model 19, and I wanted to fire it. So I was driving down there. I mean, there's wide open spaces. There wasn't a car or a house in sight, and a little dirt road, and I went out this little dirt road and went to nothing but a couple of piles of dirt. I thought that's a good background. So I thought I'd pop off a few rounds. So I shoot my Glock, bap, 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 bap. And there was some oil cans I guess somebody had dumped out there. He's either trash or they changed the oil in their car or something. So I was shooting them, bop, 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 bop. And all of a sudden the sheriff pulls up. I mean, in a dust cloud. He was mad. Pulls up, dust flying. He jumps out of his car. What the hell are you doing? And of course I was in uniform.
Yeah.
And in a government vehicle. So I don't think he felt threatened, But I said, I'm just popping off a few rounds. I didn't think I'd... He says, farmer down the road heard the rounds going off, and, you're too close to city property or something. I don't know. So he gave me some humma. And I said, hey, no problem. I'll pack up my stuff and I'll leave. But it was just a funny moment.
Wow.
One of the things that happens out there. I didn't think anybody'd mind shooting guns out there,
Well, we hear gunfire regularly, so...
Yeah, I lived out in the country for a while, and usually on the weekends, every Saturday morning, you hear somebody shooting.
Yeah.
So, but anyways.
Getting breakfast ready.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Nothing wrong with that.
It's kind of funny, when we first moved into our area, one of our little mini pigs got loose, and so my husband laughed because I didn't want to tell anybody. I figured, he'll turn up. But we moved this big reptile zoo into their county.
Oh,
I don't want to first thing, hi, nice to meet you. We just lost an animal. Have you seen it? We have 20-foot pythons.
Yeah.
But have you seen our, And so he's asking everybody, hey, we lost a little black and white spotted pig. Have you seen it? So one of the ladies that works in HR at the hospital, she calls him and she says, hey, my husband has your pig. We lived right down the street from you guys. So we said, oh, great. And she said, you want to come get him? Well, we go get him. He's been out for 2 or 3 weeks. He's 3 times the size that he was.
He's found food.
And the guy said, well, nobody claimed him, so I was fattening him up to butcher him.
Oh, no.
And he says, well, here you can have your mini pig back. And
It wasn't mini anymore. You're lucky. You're lucky.
We're very lucky. And so is Sid, our pig, because he's still alive to oink about the tail.
Yeah, he didn't become bacon.
No, not that day. So your birds, they seem like they want our attention. Should we go?
You want to go see them, or do you want me to bring one in here, or what do you want? Come here. Oh, you gotta itch your eye. Come on. There you go.
Wow.
May 30th, 1977. It was my second visit to Langtree, Texas, where back in the 70s, that was the hot spot for catching gray bands. Langtree, Valverde County. Mm-hmm. And they had just come on the protected list.
Okay.
So I had drove from California to Del Rio, got a room in Del Rio, went out to hunt that night. It was Memorial Weekend, full moon. But my friend I told you about that showed me about gray bands when I was 12 years old, he told me where to go. He says, you go up this dirt road out of Langtree, and there's an old sheep sign, a sign that with a sheep on it. And he says, you turn around there and go back. And so I thought, okay, I'll do that. So I go up there, and I'm coming back down the road, and I've been back and forth on the road all night. It was about 3 in the morning, and I'm heading back down the road. And of course, back in those days, I mean, you didn't see nobody out there. And I'm up this dirt road, and all of a sudden I see headlights coming up. And I thought, oh crap, I hope this isn't some angry rancher or fishing game or something. And I pull up. The guy pulls up next to me, and he leans his arm out the window. He's got a cigarette hanging out his mouth, and he says, you finding any Blairs? And of course that was John Hollister. And this is back in the day when he was still a pretty young man, but he was driving an Olds 88. And of course I'm kind of still skeptical because again I was told to be careful out there. And I had a pistol. I had a .357 under my seat, and I pulled it up, had my hand on it, just in case, because I didn't know what was going to happen. But it was John Hollister. He introduced himself, and he says, you're not going to find any, back then they were called Blairs. He says, you're not going to find any Blairs out tonight. He says, it's a full moon, the wind's blowing 25 miles an hour, tumbleweeds are blowing across the road. He says, you're not going to find nothing. He says, come on back to the Del Rio there, and I'll buy you a cup of coffee at the, the Kettle. There was a restaurant called the Kettle that everybody used to hang out at. He says, come back there and I'll tell you everything about finding gray bands. And this is 77. I was 23 years old. So we start driving. I says, I'll give you the first shot at the road. We'll turn around. Back then I smoked. So I says, I'll have a cigarette and I'll give you a head start. So he says, okay. So he goes on down the road and I'm smoking a cigarette. And I could still see his taillights ahead of me there. I put my cigarette out and I get my truck and I start to drive. And I didn't go 50 feet. And there's a coming up. You know how they grade the dirt roads? There's like a little ridge of dirt. Here's a gray band crawling right over that ridge of dirt. I couldn't believe it. Full moon, wind's blowing, and I catch it, and I'll even show you a picture of it in a minute here. So, man, my heart's thumping. Holy crap. I catch this thing and I bag it. And I go back into town and I didn't tell Hollister because I didn't know him back then. I mean, I didn't know who this guy was. I mean, he might go tell the fishing game that I got it. And back then they just made it illegal and to hunt them. And I didn't want to get caught. So we go in there and I meet him over at the Kettle. And he starts telling me all these stories about finding gray bands. And the whole time I've got this one bagged in my truck. And to this day, I never told him. And I've known the guy for how long is that? 40 years?
Well, I just want to thank you for this epic day. I got to touch my first galop. We didn't even talk about that.
Isn't that cool?
A turtle of water.
Oh, here.
In the intro. That was an amazing surprise. Got to see some species of beaded I've never seen before. We've got a bird putting on a show over here.
Who needs a ceiling fan when you got that?
Yeah. And some incredible birds, and your Colubrid collection is like out of this world. Amazing. So thank you so much for inviting us into your home. It is a beautiful home, and
Well, thank you.
You've led an amazing life, and it's been an honor to meet you, and I hope this is the beginning of a long and beautiful friendship.
Well, good. Well, thanks for coming out and taking the time.
Definitely.
It's been fun for me too, and I can't wait to see myself on YouTube.
Yeah, you're gonna be
It'll be fun.
Yeah, superstar.
Yeah.
So I want to give a big shout out and thanks to Joe Phelan for his interview with Stu, because that's how we got to hear some kind of current information about him. So we'll link that interview below.
Yeah, that's good.
And if people want to buy some snakes from you, I know you vend at some of the local shows, and you also have a Facebook page, Stu's Herps, is that correct?
That's right.
So we'll link that below. Yeah, amazing. Just wow, what a day. I'm yeah, so overwhelmed. Well, thank you once again, and maybe the next time we interview you, it'll be you hanging out at our place.
Maybe. Might be. I get out that way every now and then.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Skittles, for being a good girl.
Kissy, kissy.
Yeah. And for all the other birds for providing lovely background vocals. That was exciting.
Yeah. Now notice they're all quiet when we're in here. See, they just get noisy and loud when you leave the room. But now they get some attention and they're happy.
Awesome. Well, thank you once again.
Sure, you're welcome.
I can't wait to see you again.
Thank you.
Thank
It's been
you,
a
everyone.
pleasure.
Awesome.